Elbert Harris was one of 5 known lynching victims in Anderson County, South Carolina. The time period after the Civil War was known as an age of racial terror, as many of the systems and values in place before the war remained through other forms. Deeply held stereotypes, especially with regards to criminality, were rampant, making African Americans in the South instant suspects for any crimes.
We have been working for about 4 years now to do this conversation really about what happened in Anderson and what we should remember, but also the notion that we should then move toward reconciliation. I'm Stuart Sprauge. I came to Anderson College in those days in 1977 and taught for about 20 years in religion and philosophy. And then I moved to ANMed Health, where I taught physicians, medical ethics, and communication skills for 20 years.
I am Christina Griswold. I would say a lay genealogist. I'm not a professional by no means, but I've thoroughly enjoyed doing research. The Anderson Area Remembrance Project is sharing all the stories of the people that were lynched in Anderson County. We went out and gathered soil at those locations. Because if you think about it, when we all turn dust after we pass, and these people's blood, tears, sweat are in that literal soil, literally, you know. So it's very symbolic, and being able to have something visual.
On May 20th, 1898, a mob of approximately 20 white men brutally whipped and beat a black teenager named Elbert Harris, 18 years old, on the side of the road between Iva and Anderson, South Carolina. On the evening of Tuesday, May 19th, a gin house belonging to a white man in Iva burned down. Suspecting arson, law enforcement officers began to search for suspects. According to press accounts, suspicion was focused on an African-American family, the Harrises, that eventually led to the search of their home. According to an 1880 census, the Harris family lived in an area known as the Dark Corner. The officers searched the Harris family home. They reported finding railroad tickets and multiple firearms, which they alleged was evidence to justify a presumption of guilt against Osbury Harris, Joseph Harris, and Elbert Harris. The Harrises were arrested, after which all 3 men were placed in custody of a specially appointed constable to be transferred to the county jail in Anderson, approximately 16 miles north of Iva. Roughly 2 or 3 miles en route to Anderson, a mob of about 20 white men overtook the escort and seized Elbert Harris, intent on harming him. The mob proceeded to whip and beat Elbert Harris, then left him lying brutally injured on the side of the road. A member of the mob then returned to the constable and told him where he could find his brutalized body. When the officer found Mr. Harris, he was still on the ground and he reported being whipped. The constable, placing him on the back of the escort transportation, continued on with him being in critical condition. County jail sheriff called a doctor to tend to Elbert Harris, who was very sick, and upon examination was found to have marked violence on his back and his legs. However, at 5 a.m. on May 25th, Elbert Harris was found dead in his cell after suffering at the jail for 4 days following the beating. Thank you.
What we have mostly is newspaper accounts from that period. And as we have learned, newspaper accounts are not absolutely objective accounts of what goes on. It's filtered through the eyes of the reporter. Certainly there was no attempt to administer justice, give him a fair hearing, or do anything that we would expect in a normal society that would be a right for anyone to have a chance to explain themselves if they were accused of a crime. So it was just sheer, total injustice, and primarily because he was a black man and he was just presumed to be guilty without any attempt to actually investigate and find out the truth.
I am Tim Taylor, and I'm the town clerk and treasurer for the town. Well, Iva is a place, as a kid growing up, you learn who everybody is. You know your neighbors. You go to school with your neighbors. For the most part, everybody who lives here loves their neighbor, wants to do what's good for the community and what's good for the future of the community. It's very rare that you would meet somebody who doesn't know you or know of you. In the 1700s, Iva was pretty much a farming area. In the 1800s, the railroad system from Charleston came into Iva, Augusta to Anderson. Iva became a shipping. Towards the end of the 1800s era, the town was basically purchased. It was a plantation, and Dr. Cook purchased the town from Ms. Brown. People wanted to be more in the central area where the shipping was taking place. That brought about the textile community, which we had in the 1900s. That's basically the history of the last 300 years.
We asked Tim if he knew or heard of Elbert Harris's story. His honest reaction showcased this was the first time he had heard this story.
Well, knowing everybody's story is one thing. In the current, in my lifetime, you have, centuries of history here where it's impossible to know everybody's story, and it's impossible to know what the history is of every family who's lived here.
Tim shared the history of the town of Iva, which many believe borders the area called the Dark Corner.
Let me just say, I can't verify that is the reference Dark Corner of Iva. That seems to be the agreed location where the Moffattsville area was. And there's an old church there, an old cemetery there, that a lot of Iva's history is in that area. Of course, that's one of the areas that's a couple miles outside of the township. And our founder, Dr. Cook, and his wife are buried in that cemetery. So there is some history of Moffattsville.
That cemetery is located next to the location of the former Generosity ARP Church. This cemetery contains gravestones for many Confederate soldiers and a plot for the Harris family. Inside the family Harris plot, we found a headstone with the initials EAH, and we wonder if this headstone is the final resting place of Elbert Harris.
Unfortunately, I'm just not qualified to give you an answer on that, because I don't know that story. Yep. And I don't know who those Harrises are that are buried there. So I just can't draw a conclusion based on what I don't know there. I do know that that's a very old cemetery, and there are a lot of familiar last names buried there. Obviously, that cemetery means a lot to the town because Dr. Cook and his wife are buried there, and we want to preserve that cemetery for whatever reason. There are individuals buried there that their memory should be preserved through the stones that are out there. And whatever history that is, bad or good, we want them to rest in peace, and we want to take care of that cemetery as best we can, and provide dignity there as much as we can. But unfortunately, there's a part of the past that we don't have clarity on. We don't know every detail of every family that's buried there. I'd like to learn, and I'm sure that the people here would like to learn as well.
Their truth was never told. Their real story was never told. We just got some story, because even like the coroner's inquest, when they interviewed like in Rubens, they interviewed the women, the witnesses or whatever, the men were writing for these women. So how do we know that's what they really said?
We want to address the problem by saying, let's remember, let's memorialize, let's pay honor to the victims of these tragedies.
These stories, unfortunately, are things we deal with as part of our history, not just here, but if you're from the South and from this area, unfortunately, it's part of the past that we do learn from.
Today, the 5 victims' jars of soil and their stories can be remembered at an exhibit inside the Anderson County Museum, as well as at the Equal Justice Initiative. Anderson University has also contributed to the Anderson Area Remembrance and Reconciliation Initiative through multiple ceremonial pieces, including written pieces, documentaries, sculptures, and musical performances in honor.
All the families that you're doing research on, their lives meant something. Their lives meant something. And, when we pass away, and there will be a name on a stone somewhere for us one day, we hope our lives meant something as well. And, one day somebody may do research on me, somebody may do research on you, who knows?